Okay, Joyce, we're here in Sri Lanka.
Finally.
We're really happy to be here. Launch of the United Nations nitrogen campaign, never been done before on the planet. We've got to tell the world about nitrogen. What's your immediate reactions as you come to this event and think, how are we going to do that?
My immediate reaction, summarized in one word, is excitement. I've been in Colombo now for 2 days. I have been engaging with students, with policymakers, with innovators. I have been absolutely pleasantly surprised by the knowledge of a normal person, not just Sri Lankan, but also outside, about nitrogen and its interlinkages to environmental challenges. Yesterday I was engaging with the students. The questions they raised, deep scientific questions, but very practical, linking to food security, to agriculture sector. So the excitement. For policymakers, clearly there was a hunger for this type of global advocacy. We've heard from some of the member states who are now looking into post this event into actions. I think the third is the links with the Sustainable Development Goals. I liked very much what you said, Mark, that we should not look at the next 2 years. We should look at up to 2030, because we already have the goals. So for me, I'm delighted that I could be here to support you. But I also, I was reflecting on why this is special. I think it's special also because the whole campaign is informed by science. You have managed to mobilize through your network not only scientific data, but scientists as a network to support the global launch. So that combination of science, policy, and politics and communities are very key dimensions of my existence here.
So I want to bring this now to the UN.
Yes.
The United Nations Environment Programme has adopted this nitrogen resolution. For us as scientists, we're very excited, of course. The question is how to go the next steps. Here we're at this event, but we've got that next 10 years up to 2030.
Correct.
If you were to make some advice on informing that roadmap, how to get there, how to work with the countries, the UNEP has a Committee of Permanent Representatives, you have the United Nations Environment Assembly, what would be your advice to the scientists, to the world, to the countries? How are we going to strengthen those next steps to really mobilize the countries through the UN?
I think from the UN perspective, we're excited that this global campaign is happening 8 months after a resolution. I think it's important to put that on the record. This is not common, but it's very much welcomed action. I think looking ahead, my advice to policymakers and also to ourselves would be twofold. One is, as I mentioned in my speech, the issue of nitrogen challenge is not new. So how do we put it in the context of our existing work? For example, there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to environmental challenges or solutions. So if you are Maldives, for example, as we heard from a representative today, how can we as UNEP support the coral reefs and nitrogen issue around Maldives? But so looking and customizing solutions, including technical advice to different countries, because each country is very different and this challenge is very different, manifests itself in very different. I think too, we should remember nitrogen challenge does not have geographical boundary. We talked a lot about pollution, that if something happens in one country, it can easily cross over. Climate change is everybody's problem. Lastly, time is running out. The cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of action. So how do we build on this Colombo momentum to actually bring action? Because that's what citizens and everybody is expecting from us.
Okay, so that takes us straight to these 2030 goals.
Yes.
I might ask myself the question, how many of those sustainable development goals are going to really be delivered? Because some of them are scarily ambitious, but the planet is scarily under threat. How are we going to get to 2030? We're going to have an agreement this week on the Colombo Declaration. Let's see how brave it is. But what would be your advice on framing targets? Do you think targets like that are useful? How would you mobilize countries? How far should the countries go?
Yeah, you know, I'm a strong believer of you manage what you can measure. If you know what the targets are, that tends to drive performance and focus. We already have the Sustainable Development Goals. I would say after and if the Colombo Declaration gets passed through, we should sit down with countries and translate that declaration for specific action at the country level. But I'm also excited that later this week, you're having a regional South Asia regional meeting, because it's important for the regional members of the region to come together and say, how can we address this challenge at the regional level? So we need country-specific actions, we need regional action, and then of course global action. And this is the top in terms of launching, but it's just the beginning of a journey. And we will support you.
That's great. Now I got one last question before we finish. I understand that in a former life, as a younger person, you were a microbiologist.
Yes.
Now here you are looking after UN Environment Programme, working with Inga, and you've got oversight of such a wide programme, but in your head you're still a microbiologist. Does that inform how you think about nitrogen?
Absolutely. I mean, I should also mention I was a microbiologist, and my favorite subject, even when I was in high school and I was doing physics, chemistry, and biology, was actually chemistry. And the whole table for me was my bread and butter when I was younger. What I love about my scientific background, one is I always look for evidence to help inform my positions, and that could mean data or any type of evidence, including when I give speeches. Two is the analytical understanding. I mean, this nitrogen, when you kindly invited me to this meeting, I actually went back and sort of refreshed my chemistry and interlinkages between nitrogen and chlorophyll and hemoglobin and what have you. So I got a very constructive distraction from my regular day job. But also, lastly, I would say environmental challenges, they're all interconnected. You need a bottom line science, carbon, nitrogen, but also not losing the forest picture of what the challenges are. So it's been an exciting going back to nitrogen as a student.
Well, thank you, Joyce. Joyce Msuya, Deputy Executive Director of UN Environment, thank you so much for joining us and making it happen here in Colombo and in the nitrogen decade ahead.
Thank you, but also I should congratulate you, Professor Sutton, for your leadership. You invited me to your first event in Nairobi back in April, and frankly, I did not foresee this happening this very, very fast. I have been impressed by the numbers of participants here, remarkable, between Sri Lankas but also outside. I've been impressed by the mobilization of the scientific community that you have led. So I really want to appreciate your leadership in this campaign.
Well, thank you. INMS is a joint project between the International Nitrogen Initiative and United Nations Environment Programme.
Yes.
So we're working together.
We're working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thanks.